The rain was heavy that night in the small Canadian town of Banff. The streets were quiet except for the soft hum of neon lights from a nearby diner. It was almost midnight when Keanu Reeves parked his old motorcycle outside, his helmet dripping with water. He was in town shooting a low-budget film, far from Hollywood lights, and he liked the silence that came with small towns. It gave him peace. As he stepped inside, the diner was almost empty. A waitress was cleaning the counter. The smell of coffee filled the air, and an old radio played a soft country song. Keanu ordered a simple meal, just soup and tea. He looked tired, not because of fame, but because he often carried quiet thoughts heavier than anyone could see. He believed kindness was the only thing that ever made sense in a world that often forgot it. As he ate, the door opened, and a young man walked in, soaked from the rain. His clothes were torn, his eyes red, and his hands trembled. He stood near the door as if afraid to move closer. The waitress told him kindly that the diner was closing soon. The man nodded but didn't leave. He looked at the counter, then at Keanu's table, then back down at his empty hands. Keanu watched quietly. He could see the exhaustion, the hunger, and something else, a silent pain. He called the waitress and said softly, "Can I get one more bowl of soup and a sandwich, please?" She nodded and brought it over. When she tried to hand it to him, Keanu pointed at the stranger instead. The man looked up, confused. "Sit," Keanu said gently. "Eat while it's warm." The stranger hesitated but slowly walked over. He sat down, his eyes full of both fear and gratitude. Keanu smiled slightly and said, "You look like you've had a long day." The man's name was Eli. He had lost his wallet earlier that morning while traveling for a job interview. He had been walking in the rain for hours, hoping to find a place to stay. Nobody had stopped. Nobody had helped. Keanu listened without interrupting. There was something about Eli's voice that reminded him of himself years ago. Quiet, uncertain, but still holding on to hope. After dinner, Keanu paid the bill and told Eli, "I have a couch in my hotel room. It's not much, but it's warm." Eli looked shocked. He refused at first, saying he couldn't accept help from a stranger. But Keanu said calmly, "Kindness is free. Just pass it on when you can." They walked together through the rain. The hotel clerk looked surprised to see Keanu bringing someone in, but he didn't say anything. Inside the small room, Keanu gave Eli a towel, dry clothes, and a blanket. Eli thanked him again and again. His voice breaking before going to sleep, Eli said quietly, I don't know why you helped me," Keanu replied. "Maybe because someone once helped me when I needed it most." They both went silent. The storm outside softened, and soon Eli fell asleep on the couch. Keanu sat by the window for a while, watching the rain slide down the glass. He didn't know who Eli truly was, and he didn't need to. He just knew one thing. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness could ripple farther than anyone could imagine. In the morning, Keanu left early for his film shoot. He left a small note on the table that said, "Stay strong. The world is still kind." When he returned that night, Eli was gone. The bed was neatly folded, and the towel was hung back on the chair. Keanu smiled quietly, hoping the man had found his path. Years went by. The memory of that rainy night faded into the thousands of faces Keanu met along his journey. He never expected to see Eli again. He never expected the world to remind him how powerful one quiet moment could become. But fate was already writing its own story behind the curtain. Somewhere far away, the man he had helped was changing lives, carrying a spark that began in that small diner. Keanu had no idea that the kindness he shared that night would one day return to him in a way that would shake his heart forever. And when that day came, the truth would not just surprise him, it would humble him beyond words. It had been almost 10 years since that rainy night in Banff. Keanu Reeves had filmed dozens of movies, traveled the world, and given countless interviews. Yet through all the noise of fame and the flash of cameras, he never forgot the feeling of that quiet diner. Sometimes, when he was alone in his trailer or waiting backstage before an event, he would remember that stranger named Eli. He never knew what happened to him. But deep inside, he hoped the man had found peace. One calm morning in Los Angeles, Keanu sat at his kitchen table with a cup of tea. He preferred mornings like this. No reporters, no directors, no crowd. The sound of birds and sunlight spilling through the window made him feel grounded. That peace, however, didn't last long. His assistant walked in with a puzzled look. "There's something strange in the mail," she said. "No sender name, no address, just this envelope." Keanu looked up, curious. The envelope was plain and cream-colored, sealed carefully. It had no markings except for one small symbol embossed in gold, a circle with a single line through it, almost like a bridge. He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple white card with a message written in neat handwriting. "Your presence changed someone's life. Please attend the Dawn Foundation's private gala this Friday night at the Aurora Hall. Your seat is already reserved." There was no signature, no explanation, no contact number. Only the words, "Your presence changed someone's life." Keanu stared at the card, his mind racing. It could have been another fan gesture, maybe a charity trying to get attention. But something about the message felt personal. He didn't recognize the name Dawn Foundation. He searched online but found little information, only a small note about a new organization that supported homeless youth and single mothers through education and housing. He leaned back in his chair. His gut told him to go. Not as a celebrity, not for publicity, but because the message carried a tone of truth, like it was written by someone who truly knew him. That Friday, the sky over Los Angeles glowed orange and purple. Keanu arrived at Aurora Hall in a simple black suit, avoiding the red carpet and photographers. Inside, the atmosphere was calm yet elegant. The hall was filled with soft lights, white flowers, and quiet music. People from different walks of life filled the tables, some in designer clothes, others in simple outfits. It wasn't a typical Hollywood event. It felt genuine. An elderly woman greeted him with warmth. "Welcome, sir. Your seat is near the center, table 7. As he walked through the crowd, he noticed framed photographs displayed around the hall, pictures of children, families, and community shelters. Under each photo were words like hope restored, education renewed, and a second chance. It wasn't just an award event. It was a celebration of lives rebuilt. Keanu sat down quietly at table 7. Around him were people who didn't seem to recognize him, which he found comforting. He preferred it that way. An older man next to him smiled and said, "First time attending one of these?" Keanu nodded. "Yeah. I wasn't sure what to expect," the man chuckled. "Same here. But apparently tonight's speaker has a story worth hearing. They say it's about a stranger who changed everything." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "A stranger who changed everything." The phrase stuck in his head. The lights dimmed and the host took the stage. The atmosphere turned respectful, quiet, and emotional. The host spoke about how the Dawn Foundation began with a single act of compassion years ago, though the details were still unknown to most of the audience. As Keanu listened, something strange happened. His heart began to race, like it somehow already knew what was coming. A slideshow began to play. It showed images of homeless shelters being built, children smiling, and volunteers teaching in remote areas. The host continued, "This organization began because one man chose kindness when he could have walked away. That small act became a seed that grew into hope for thousands." Keanu leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. The host then announced, "And tonight, for the first time, we reveal the full story behind how the Dawn Foundation was born. Our founder wanted to keep it private, but he believes the world deserves to know how one stranger's kindness can change generations." The crowd clapped gently. Keanu's chest tightened. He didn't know why, but something deep inside him whispered that this night was about more than a charity. It felt like destiny circling back as the applause faded. The host smiled and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man whose story began with a single moment of compassion, the founder of the Dawn Foundation, Mr. Eli Hart." Keanu froze. The name struck him like thunder. For a moment, the noise in the room vanished. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. A tall man walked onto the stage. He looked confident yet humble, wearing a simple gray suit. His face was older now, but his eyes, the same deep, searching eyes Keanu remembered from that rainy night, had not changed. It was him, the stranger from the diner. Keanu felt his hands tremble under the table. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Eli stood before the microphone, smiled softly, and said, "Many years ago, I met someone who didn't know me. didn't ask questions, and didn't expect anything in return. That one act of kindness saved my life. Tonight, I want to tell you what happened after that night." Keanu's throat tightened. He wasn't sure if anyone else in the room knew the truth, but he did. His past had just walked back into his life, carrying a story he never expected to hear. And deep inside, Keanu felt something he hadn't felt in years, suspense mixed with gratitude, and the quiet ache of a mystery finally returning home. The story that began in a small diner on a stormy night was about to unfold again. But this time, the whole world would witness what kindness had truly created. The hall fell completely silent as Eli adjusted the microphone. The soft glow of the stage lights touched his face, revealing calm strength and humility. Everyone watched him closely, unaware that one man sitting quietly at table 7 was living through a wave of memories and emotions that words could never fully describe. Keanu sat still, trying to steady his breathing. The sound of rain outside the glass walls reminded him of that night years ago. Every moment, every word, every look from Eli felt like a bridge between past and present. Eli began slowly. 10 years ago, I was lost. Not just lost in the world, but lost inside myself. I had nothing, not even the courage to ask for help. I remember walking in the rain that night, thinking that maybe the world had forgotten me. And then, a stranger looked at me and didn't turn away. He offered me food, warmth, and something I didn't think existed anymore: dignity. The crowd listened with quiet emotion. Eli continued, "That night changed everything. I never learned his name. All I remembered was his voice when he said, 'Kindness is free. Just pass it on when you can.' I promised I would. I didn't know how, but I meant it." Keanu's eyes glistened. He remembered those exact words, the weight of them, the simplicity, and how easily they had left his mouth. He had meant them sincerely, but never imagined they would carry such distance. Eli went on. "After that night, I found work at a small repair shop. I started saving, helping others when I could. One winter, I met a boy sleeping outside the shop. He reminded me of myself. I gave him food just like the stranger gave me. That boy grew up and became my first volunteer. And together, we started feeding people on the streets." A photo appeared on the screen behind him. Eli standing with a group of young volunteers handing out food to the homeless. Keanu leaned forward, recognizing the same kindness in Eli's eyes that he had seen in the diner. "Those small steps," Eli said, "turned into something bigger than we ever dreamed." People began to join. A woman who once worked 3 jobs came forward and offered to design shelters. A retired teacher started teaching street kids under a bridge. Slowly, we built what became the Dawn Foundation. The audience clapped softly, but Keanu didn't move. He was lost in thought, amazed at how something so small could ripple into something so vast. Eli paused, his tone softening. "When I built this foundation, I always believed the stranger who helped me that night would never know what became of it. But I was wrong. Life has strange ways of bringing people full circle." The screen changed again, showing an old black-and-white photograph. It was taken inside a small diner. The picture showed a young man sitting across from another man in a dark jacket. Even though the image was slightly blurry, Keanu recognized himself immediately. It was the same night, the same booth, the same rain on the window. A quiet gasp moved through the audience. "This photo was taken by the waitress that night," Eli said. "She kept it all these years and sent it to me when she saw an interview I did about the foundation. When I received it, I knew I had to find the man who started it all." Keanu lowered his head slightly. Emotions flooded him: gratitude, disbelief, and humility. He had done that act without expecting anything, and yet here he was, witnessing a legacy he never knew existed. Eli looked around the audience. "The truth is, I found out who that man was. And tonight I know he's here. I invited him not to thank him, but to remind everyone that kindness doesn't vanish. It travels. It finds new hearts to live in." Whispers spread across the hall. People turned to look around, curious to know who the mysterious stranger was. But Keanu stayed silent. He didn't want attention. He didn't want applause. He only wanted to listen. Eli continued. "The man I met that night didn't know me, but his one act became a chain reaction. Through this foundation, we've built 50 shelters, educated thousands of children, and created jobs for hundreds of families. And none of it would have happened if that stranger hadn't chosen kindness over comfort. The lights dimmed and soft piano music began to play. Videos of smiling children, rebuilt schools, and families holding hands filled the screens. Tears filled many eyes in the audience. Keanu's heart pounded. He felt small, not because of guilt or sadness, but because he realized how powerful one quiet moment could be. A simple meal and a few kind words had turned into hope for thousands. As the video ended, Eli looked out into the crowd again and said, "The man who helped me probably doesn't think he did anything special. But what he did changed the direction of countless lives. And tonight, if he's listening, I just want to say thank you, not for saving me, but for teaching me what it means to save others." A standing ovation filled the room. People clapped with emotion, some wiping tears, others whispering about how beautiful the story was. But amid the applause, Keanu remained seated, his hands still. His chest was tight, and his thoughts were a storm of gratitude and reflection. After the applause faded, the host returned to the stage. "Thank you, Mr. Hart. Your story reminds us that one good deed can light the path for generations. Now, please join us for dinner and conversations with the team of the Dawn Foundation." As people stood and began to move around, Keanu sat quietly. He looked at Eli on stage, surrounded by people shaking his hand and congratulating him. The man had built something beautiful out of pain, something that would outlive them both. Just then, Eli looked toward table 7. His eyes met Keanu's. For a second, the noise of the room disappeared again. Eli froze, realization spreading across his face. Keanu gave a gentle nod and a small, humble smile. Eli's eyes filled with emotion. He whispered something under his breath that no one else could hear. It was a single word: "You." Their silent exchange carried more meaning than 1,000 speeches. Two lives that had once crossed paths in darkness now met again in light. Keanu stood slowly, blending into the quiet crowd moving toward the dinner hall. He didn't plan to go to the stage yet. Something told him his part in the story was still waiting, and deep inside he could feel it. Something else was coming. Something even more powerful than this reunion. Something that would reveal just how far one act of kindness had traveled. The night wasn't over. The truth behind the Dawn Foundation had only begun to unfold. The dinner hall glowed with soft amber lights and the gentle sound of live violin music. Waiters moved quietly between tables as guests spoke about the story they had just heard. Most were still emotional, whispering about how one act of kindness had changed an entire community. Keanu sat in a quiet corner, far from the center. He preferred watching rather than being watched. He looked around at the laughter, the warmth, and the sense of unity that filled the room. It amazed him how something as simple as compassion could bring together people who had never met before. Across the hall, Eli stood surrounded by reporters and supporters. He smiled politely, but his eyes kept searching. When they finally found Keanu sitting alone, he excused himself and walked toward him. Keanu stood up slightly, greeting him with a nod. "You came?" Eli said softly. His voice trembled slightly, as if holding back tears. Keanu smiled. "Yeah, I almost didn't, but something about that invitation felt real." Eli laughed nervously. "I wasn't sure you would. It took me months to find a way to reach you without revealing too much." They both sat down at the small table. For a moment, there was silence. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like two old friends meeting after years of walking separate roads. Eli finally spoke. "You probably don't remember every detail of that night. For you, it might have been small, but for me, it was the night I stopped feeling invisible." Keanu looked at him, his eyes kind. "I remember the rain. I remember your eyes. I knew you were trying to stay strong." Eli nodded. "I was. I had no one back then. I didn't even have hope. I was angry at the world, at myself. But when you said those words, 'Kindness is free,' it changed everything. I thought maybe the world wasn't as cruel as I believed." Keanu smiled gently. "Those words weren't planned. I just said what I felt." Eli looked down for a moment, his voice soft. "And that's what makes them powerful." The two men talked for a while, sharing memories. Eli told Keanu how the Dawn Foundation began with nothing but a group of volunteers sleeping in tents under a bridge, feeding whoever they could. Over time, donations came in. More people joined, inspired not by fame but by purpose. Then Eli leaned closer and said something that caught Keanu's attention. There's something I never told anyone before tonight. The biggest turning point of the foundation didn't come from me. It came from someone else. Someone your kindness helped reach in a way you'd never imagine. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, curious. What do you mean? Eli took a deep breath. About 2 years after I started the foundation, I was visiting a small town outside Toronto. There was a shelter we built there. One evening, a young woman came to volunteer. She looked nervous, like she didn't belong. She told me she had been homeless once, too, but someone had saved her life years earlier. She said a man had stopped his car in the middle of a busy road to help her when she fainted. He paid her medical bills quietly and disappeared before she woke up. Keanu felt a strange pull in his chest. He didn't interrupt. Eli continued, "That woman's name is Maya. She became one of our top donors and the reason we were able to expand. Her company funds most of our new shelters. But here's the part that still gives me chills. When I asked her why she chose to help, she said it was because of the man who saved her life that day. She said, he told me the same thing someone once told him. Kindness is free." Keanu's breath caught. His mind flashed back to years ago, long before the diner when he was filming near downtown Toronto. One night, he saw a woman collapse on the sidewalk while crossing the street. He had rushed to help, called an ambulance, and paid her bills without giving his name. He hadn't thought about it since. His voice came out quiet. Her name was Maya? Eli nodded. Yeah. She said she never knew who he was, only that he had kind eyes and a calm voice. Keanu looked down, his heart heavy with realization. That woman he helped had unknowingly helped Eli later by funding his dream. The circle of kindness had come back around without any of them ever planning it. Eli continued, unaware of Keanu's thoughts. When she told me her story, I felt this strange sense of connection. Like all of us, her, me, you, we were linked by something invisible, something larger than ourselves. Keanu smiled faintly. Maybe kindness has its own way of finding home? Eli nodded. Yes, and I think that's what life is, a chain of unseen kindness, moving quietly through people who never even realize they're connected. They both sat in silence again, the sound of violins filling the background. Keanu's eyes were distant, lost in reflection. He wasn't the type to believe in miracles, but this was different. This felt guided. After a moment, Eli leaned back and smiled. There's one more thing, though. The real reason I wanted you here tonight. Keanu looked up, slightly surprised. There's more? Eli hesitated, as if unsure how to say it. The person who funded our biggest project, the City of Light Center, it's a facility for orphans, veterans, and people with disabilities. That project wasn't funded by me or Maya. It came from an anonymous donor who wanted to stay hidden. We only knew the initials on the document. K.R. Keanu froze. His spoon fell gently onto his plate. Eli watched him, confused. Keanu tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. K.R.? He repeated. Eli nodded slowly. Yeah. I tried to find who it was, but all records were sealed. Whoever it was paid millions to build that center. I always wondered who they were. It felt like whoever started this chain wanted to close it, to bring the story full circle. Keanu leaned back, silent. He remembered making that donation years ago. He hadn't used his name, he never did. He only used his initials. He had seen a story on the news about the Dawn Foundation back then and felt moved to help, not realizing it was the same man he'd helped in the diner. His heart was pounding now. Not from shock, but from a quiet awe. He realized that kindness truly did travel, through lives, across time, through strangers who never met, all connected by small, invisible threads. Eli looked at him curiously. You okay? Keanu smiled faintly, eyes soft. Yeah, just thinking how strange life can be. Eli nodded. It is strange. Sometimes it feels like the universe remembers every kind act, even when we don't. Keanu looked across the hall at the photo of the diner hanging on the screen. The rain in that image, the quiet booth, the simple meal, it all seemed like a lifetime ago. And yet, its echo was still living, still growing, still saving lives. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe that's how kindness works. It never ends." The night moved on, but for Keanu, something deep had already shifted. He had come expecting to watch a story about someone else. Instead, he had rediscovered the meaning of his own humanity. But the night wasn't over yet. There was still one more truth waiting in the shadows, one final revelation that would leave him speechless before the world. The night outside Aurora Hall had turned cool and quiet. Stars peeked through thin clouds while the sound of laughter and music filled the evening air. Inside, people were taking photos, shaking hands, and celebrating the success of the event. Yet amid all the light and sound, Keanu Reeves stood by the window, watching the reflection of the city lights in silence. He wasn't thinking about fame, films, or the headlines that might appear tomorrow. His mind was far away. Back to the rain-soaked diner, the young man with hungry eyes, the faint smile of the waitress, and the warmth of that one simple bowl of soup. It felt like the universe had written a story across time, and tonight it had quietly shown him the final page. As he stood there, Eli approached again, this time holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might need this," he said softly. Keanu smiled. "You remembered?" "Of course," Eli replied, handing him a cup. "I still drink tea when I feel lost. It reminds me of that night." They stood side by side, sipping quietly. The hall behind them buzzed with movement, but their corner felt untouched by it all. After a long silence, Eli said, "There's something else I need to tell you. I didn't plan to share it publicly, but I think you deserve to know." Keanu turned to him, listening carefully. Eli took a slow breath. 2 years ago, I got sick. Nothing serious at first, just exhaustion, stress. But it got worse. I couldn't keep up with the foundation work. I didn't have enough money to cover the treatment. Then, out of nowhere, the hospital told me that someone had paid every bill in full. I tried to find out who, but they said the donor wished to stay anonymous. The only thing on the form were those same initials. K.R. Keanu froze. The words sank deep. He had donated to that hospital fund anonymously after reading about a foundation founder's illness in a local paper. He hadn't known it was Eli. Eli continued, "That's when I started realizing something. Maybe life was returning kindness to where it started. I thought about that night again. I thought about you. I even wondered if maybe, somehow it was you." Keanu looked down at his tea, then met Eli's eyes. There was no point in hiding anymore. "It was," he said quietly. Eli's breath caught. "It was you?" Keanu nodded slowly. "I saw the article. I didn't know it was you at first, but something about it felt familiar. I used the same initials I always do. I never thought it would come back to you." For a moment, Eli didn't speak. His eyes filled with tears, and he covered his mouth. The weight of the realization hit him. The man who had once fed him had not only changed his life, but saved it again years later without even knowing. Eli whispered, "You didn't just give me food that night. You gave me my whole life back, twice." Keanu shook his head gently. "No, Eli. I just did what anyone should do. You're the one who turned kindness into something far bigger." Eli smiled through tears. "But without you, none of this would exist." Keanu looked out at the night sky again. "Maybe that's how kindness works. It's not about credit. It's about connection. We pass it forward, and someday it finds its way home." Their conversation was interrupted by the host calling everyone back into the main hall for the closing ceremony. As they walked back in, Keanu felt strangely light. For years, he had believed his small gestures disappeared into the world like raindrops in the ocean. Tonight, he learned that every drop mattered. The host stood on stage again. "Before we end tonight, we'd like to honor the anonymous donor who made the City of Light Center possible. This person asked to remain hidden, but we recently confirmed their identity, and they are with us tonight." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Keanu froze. He hadn't told anyone except Eli. The host continued, smiling toward the crowd. "Please welcome to the stage Mr. Keanu Reeves." The room erupted in gasps and applause. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. Keanu's first instinct was to refuse, but Eli touched his arm gently. "Go," he said. They deserve to know what humility looks like. Keanu took a slow breath and walked toward the stage. Every step felt heavy with emotion. As he reached the podium, the applause grew softer, turning into respectful silence. He looked at the audience, then at Eli, who stood near the front row. "I don't have a speech," he began softly. "I didn't expect this. I came here tonight because someone sent me an invitation that said, 'Your presence changed someone's life.' I didn't know what it meant until now." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Years ago, I met a stranger in a small town. I didn't know his story. I just saw someone who needed a little kindness. I gave him food, a place to rest, and a few words I thought he might forget. But he didn't forget. He turned that moment into a movement that has changed thousands of lives." His voice grew softer. "Tonight I found out that kindness doesn't stop where you leave it. It keeps traveling. It becomes a light in other people's lives. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that light finds its way back to you." The hall was completely silent. Many were wiping tears. Keanu looked down, his expression humble and calm. "If I learned one thing," he said, "it's that kindness is the only investment that never loses value. We might not see its results today or tomorrow, but somewhere, someone's life will get better because of it. And that's enough." Eli stood up and began clapping. One by one, everyone joined. The applause grew louder, not the loudness of fame, but the sound of pure respect. Keanu stepped away from the microphone and hugged Eli tightly. Cameras flashed, but neither of them cared. It wasn't about the attention. It was about the quiet truth they both understood. Kindness was never meant to be famous. It was meant to be shared. As the night came to an end, the crowd left slowly, still whispering about the story they had just witnessed. Keanu walked out into the cool air again, looking up at the stars. Eli joined him, standing side by side in peaceful silence. Eli said softly, "So what now?" Keanu smiled. "Now we keep passing it on." The two men stood quietly as the city lights shimmered below. Somewhere far away, in another town, another stranger would soon receive an act of kindness, and without knowing, they would continue the same story that began on a rainy night years ago. But one more twist still waited for Keanu. One more truth that would show him how far that single act had truly traveled. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Keanu's hotel room. The city was calm again after the emotional night at Aurora Hall. The applause, the hugs, the tears, it all felt like a dream. Keanu sat quietly on the balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the world wake up. His heart was full, yet peaceful. He had come to the event expecting nothing, but he had found something he didn't even know he was missing. A reminder that small acts mattered, that quiet compassion could travel through time, touching lives he would never meet. His phone buzzed softly on the table. A message appeared from Eli. "Come to the foundation this morning if you can. There's someone you should meet." Keanu smiled. After finishing his coffee, he drove to the Dawn Foundation's main center. The building was large but simple, painted in soft earth tones, surrounded by gardens that children were watering. He could hear laughter and chatter, real, living proof of what kindness had built. Eli greeted him at the entrance with a wide smile. His eyes still looked tired but full of light. "You came," Eli said warmly. "Of course," Keanu replied. "Who did you want me to meet?" Eli motioned toward the hallway. "Someone who has been waiting for this moment for a long time." They walked through a corridor decorated with photos of the foundation's milestones, new schools, shelters, hospitals, families smiling. At the end of the hall was a small art room where children were painting. Inside, a woman stood near the window looking out at the garden. When she turned, Keanu recognized her instantly. It was Maya, the same woman Eli had mentioned the night before. The woman he had once helped years ago when she fainted on the street. She smiled gently, eyes already shining with tears. "I didn't think you'd remember me," she said. Keanu's voice was soft. "I remember helping someone who needed care that night. I just didn't know it was you." Maya nodded. "You helped me when nobody stopped. I didn't even know your name until years later. When Eli told me who you were, I couldn't believe it. It felt like everything in my life had led to this moment. Eli smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. Maya funded our expansion because of you. The City of Light wouldn't exist without her. Keanu looked at her kindly. I didn't do much. I just helped when I could. Maya shook her head. That's where you're wrong. You showed me what compassion looks like. You showed Eli what humanity looks like. And now you've shown the world what humility looks like. Every brick of this building, every life saved here, it's all connected to that first act you made years ago. Keanu looked around the room. At the paintings, the children smiling, the sun pouring through the windows, and he felt his chest tighten with emotion. He had never believed in destiny, but this moment made him wonder if kindness itself had a path, one that silently guided people toward one another. Eli walked to a small table and picked up a framed document. He handed it to Keanu. We decided something last night, Eli said. The foundation will now run a new project. It's a home for children who've lost families to hardship. We named it after the phrase that started it all. Keanu looked down at the frame. On the paper was written, "The kindness is free home." Beneath it, in smaller letters, built to honor every stranger who chose to care. Keanu swallowed hard, his eyes moist. He looked at Eli and Maya, then at the children laughing outside. He said softly, I don't deserve this. Eli smiled gently. You don't need to. You lived it. The three of them walked outside into the sunlight. Children ran past, laughing, holding colorful paper kites. One small boy stopped and looked up at Keanu, smiling shyly. He held a kite shaped like a golden sun. Mr. Keanu, the boy said, they told me you made this place happen. Thank you. Keanu knelt down and smiled at him. No, kid. People like you make this place shine. The boy grinned and ran off. Keanu stood again, watching the kite rise into the sky, glowing against the bright blue morning. Eli turned to him quietly. Funny how one small choice can change everything, isn't it? Keanu nodded. Yeah. I used to think one person couldn't make a difference. Now I know one act can change 1,000 lives. Maya looked up at the sky and whispered, and it never ends. Kindness always finds a way. Keanu took a slow breath. The sun felt warm on his face. He thought of his younger self, the one sitting in that diner, offering soup to a stranger with nothing. He thought of how far that single gesture had traveled. Through Eli, through Maya, through the children now playing in the garden. The world didn't need grand speeches, he realized. It only needed quiet hearts willing to help, even when nobody was watching. As he walked back toward his car, he looked at the foundation sign one last time. The kindness is free home. He smiled softly. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that kindness had come full circle. Eli called out from behind him, Hey, Keanu, what are you going to do next? Keanu turned with a gentle smile. The same thing I've always done, he said. Keep helping strangers. And as he drove away, the sunlight poured across the road like golden silk. Children's laughter echoed behind him. The kite floated higher, catching the morning breeze. In the distance, the world kept moving, unaware that one man's small kindness had quietly built an empire of hope. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles don't begin with wealth or fame. They begin with a simple act of kindness.